Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
I woke up early that Saturday with a smile. One I hadn't worn, truly worn, in a long time. 40. It had arrived, and unlike the terrified vision I'd carried a decade earlier, I felt at peace with it. Absolutely. Completely. I had Rowan and Jasper, two amazing boys who were growing up too fast. I had a steady job, a comfortable home, and Corinne, a woman with whom I'd shared nearly 20 years of history. 20 years. It was barbecue day, the annual ritual. It never failed. Neighbors, my old high school buddies, a few relatives, and even the parents of the boys' friends were all coming over. The grill was already set up. Rowan and Jasper had arranged the tables and chairs in the backyard, working together, bickering a little, laughing more. Corinne, as always, was handling the details. Clean tablecloths. Sodas in the cooler. Napkins neatly folded. I watched her from the distance, standing near the kitchen island, just observing. I felt lucky, profoundly lucky. She was quieter than usual, I noticed that. But I chalked it up to exhaustion from the past few days. The pre-party flurry. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing. Around 2 in the afternoon, the guests started arriving. The background music played the usual mix of classic rock and something that made the teenagers nod their heads. Kids ran around, laughing, chasing each other. The smell of meat on the grill filled the whole house, a smell that meant security and good times. I received compliments on my seasoning, chatted with everyone, laughed loudly. I truly felt happy. It was as if I'd reached a rare, perfect moment of fullness. Corinne moved between the groups, smiling, serving our guests. But I kept catching that distant look in her eyes. I noticed it. I did. I figured it was just fatigue. Overwhelmed. She sometimes got like this when she was trying to juggle too many plates. Still, I walked over. I made a silly, insider joke about a forgotten ingredient. I pulled her close, just for a moment. She smiled. But it was a faraway smile. The kind of smile someone gives when they're trying to seem present, but their mind, their heart, their entire self is somewhere else entirely. I found it odd, distracting, but I didn't press. I let it go. Then an unfamiliar car pulled up in front of the house. It was a black sedan with heavily tinted windows. Everyone looked over, curious, assuming another guest had arrived a little late. A man stepped out. He was in a light-colored suit, perfectly pressed. A black leather briefcase tucked under his arm. He walked straight toward Corinne. When she saw him, she froze. It was a physical, absolute stillness, like a deer caught in the headlights. Every drop of color drained from her face. I was confused. I looked between the two of them, waiting for a nod, an introduction, some kind of explanation. A belated business meeting, maybe? The man, totally unfazed by the party setting, pulled a thick, white envelope from his briefcase. He handed it to her. Corinne took it. Her fingers trembled visibly. She opened it, read quickly, then stared at the ground. Her face was utterly white. I took a step forward. I started to ask, "Corinne, what is that?" But before I could say anything, she spun on her heels. She ran inside. She reappeared seconds later, clutching my car keys in her hand. My house key. My world. She didn't look back. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Rowan or Jasper. She got in the car, the black sedan, and she drove off quickly into the afternoon traffic. The silence that followed was awkward, crushing. Guests tried to act like nothing had happened. They really did. They tried to keep chatting, but the tension was a physical thing. It was thick enough to choke on. Rowan and Jasper exchanged confused glances. They didn't understand. Why did Mom leave in such a hurry? A neighbor, bless his heart, attempted to lighten the mood by offering more soda, but no one felt like eating or talking anymore. I stood still for a few seconds, my eyes fixed on the empty space where the gate had been. Then, I dropped the grill tongs. They clattered on the patio stone. Loud. Too loud. I took off my apron, the one that said, "King of the Grill." I walked over to where she had been standing. The white envelope lay on the patio. Open. A few loose pages inside. I picked it up. I started reading silently, but two neighbors, standing nearby, also curious, also frozen in their tracks, leaned in. They read over my shoulder. They couldn't help it. At the top of the page, the heading jumped out at all of us. Subpoena. Oakland County Family Court. Further down, One line immediately stood out, a line that punched the air out of my lung. Corinne Whitmore is summoned as a witness in the divorce proceedings between Sterling Holloway and Evelyn Holloway due to an extramarital relationship with Mr. Holloway over the past several months. I didn't need to say a word. One neighbor stepped back, clearly uncomfortable. He mumbled something and walked quickly toward his own home. The other neighbor just looked away, looked at the pool, looked at the sky. Anywhere but at me. It was too late to pretend otherwise. Sterling's name was right there, printed clearly. Corinne had been named as the other party. In a co-worker's divorce, the betrayal was no longer just a suspicion I'd let slide. It was no longer a momentary lapse. It was official, stamped, on court letterhead. I closed the envelope. Slowly, with deliberate, shaking fingers, I stared at the ground for a moment, just a moment. Then, I walked back inside, the king of the grill walking off his stage. The grill was still going. The coals glowed red. But the party was over. For everyone. The rest of the neighbors were the first to leave, quietly, then the few relatives. Finally, my oldest friends patted me on the shoulder and said goodbye with a look of pity I hated, a look that said, "We know. We are sorry." Within minutes, the house was empty. Only I and my boys remained. Rowan. Jasper, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Jasper asked if everything was okay. Just a quiet, small voice. I didn't answer him directly. I just said I needed to go inside. That I was going to rest for a bit. I said it calmly. I went upstairs. I locked the bedroom door. Lying there on the bed. On our bed. I started remembering little things. Corinne's phone always face down. Always. Deleted messages I'd once dismissed as cleaning up storage. Meetings that seemed to drag on too long. Mood swings I'd tolerated as stress. Chautauquas. Kisses that tasted like obligation, not passion. It all began to make a cold, terrible sense. This wasn't some sudden outburst. This wasn't an impulsive mistake, one drunken night. This had been building. For months. Maybe even years. A slow, systemic dismantling of my life. I felt anger, shame, a deep, consuming sadness. But above all, a sense of being ripped away from a reality I believed was solid. That night, I didn't sleep. I spent hours going through her computer. Her files, archived emails, scattered messages. They weren't hard to find. She'd been careless, maybe even tired of hiding it. One name appeared more often than it should have. Sterling. A coworker, a friend of her former boss, married father of 2 young kids. That was the man. That was the other side of the equation. His name was on the subpoena because he was being sued by his wife, and Corinne had been named as the third party. She'd have to testify, in court, for the world to see. The next morning, I called Corinne's office. She hadn't shown up. I called her best friend. She knew nothing. I tried her mother. She seemed just as surprised, maybe even more distraught than I was. Corinne had vanished. Gone. She disappeared with my car, my keys, my certainty, without a word. Rowan and Jasper were restless, sensing the vacuum of silence, but they respected my own. I spent all Sunday trying to figure out what to do. What was the right step? Finally, I decided. I called Sterling. I needed to hear it from him. I needed the final, undeniable period on the sentence. He answered. His voice was curt, deflecting, but not hostile. He was in his own crisis. He denied it at first, tried to dodge the question. I cut straight to the point. My voice was low, flat, dead. I know everything, Sterling. The subpoena is on my table. Just tell me. He sighed, a sound of absolute defeat. He admitted it. He said it was true that they'd gotten involved, that it was a mistake. He said Corinne was sorry. She didn't want to destroy our family. I hung up without responding. I didn't need excuses. I didn't need pity. I needed time. Time to think. Time to put myself back together inside. On Monday, I called work. I told them I'd be taking a few days off. Indefinitely. I spent the morning calling lawyers, figuring out next steps, the mechanics of the divorce. In the afternoon, I took the boys out for a walk, just to clear my head. But inside, everything felt gray, desaturated. The pain didn't come in shouts or explosions. It came in silence. An absence that slowly grew and filled everything. I still didn't know exactly what I'd do. But I knew with a dreadful certainty, that after that Saturday, my life would never, ever be the same. 3 days passed. No word from Corinne, no calls, no texts, No social media activity. Not even a minimal explanation. I swung between silence and urgency. I cared for the boys. I answered whatever was necessary calmly. But deep down, I already understood that everything had changed. Rowan and Jasper sensed it, too. But they still avoided asking direct questions. Their father was present. But my presence felt like that of someone sifting through the rubble of a place that once had structure. On the third night, while sorting through a pile of bills on the kitchen table, I heard my phone buzz. It was a message notification. The sender, Corinne. My body tensed. Every muscle locked. I didn't even open it right away. I took a deep breath. And I read, "I'm sorry. I don't know what I've done with my life. I never thought this could happen. I want to talk to you. Please forgive me. For our kids." I read it more than once. The words seemed hastily written. Poor punctuation. A mix of frantic guilt and raw desperation. I stood there for a while. I didn't reply. I just flipped the phone face down. I checked on the boys to make sure they were asleep. And then I locked myself in my room again. The message echoed in my mind. A persistent whisper of what was lost. The next morning, Rowan and Jasper went to spend the day with their maternal grandmother. I needed time. Alone. I calmly told the boys I had some things to sort out. They left without questions. Around 3 in the afternoon, the sound of an approaching engine made me step out of the kitchen. It was my car. Corinne had returned, driving the same vehicle she'd taken on the day of the party. She parked in front of the house, disheveled, hair hastily tied back, no makeup, her expression worn down to bone. When she walked through the front door, she was already crying. I stood waiting, expressionless. She said my name, Elias, begging me to listen. She said the relationship with Sterling was over, that it had been a mistake, that she felt empty and lost, but that she still loved our family. She still loved me. She talked nonstop, stumbling over her words, as if trying to pour everything out before I cut her off. She said she couldn't stand being away from the kids, that she couldn't bear the thought of seeing them only on weekends, that she regretted every day she'd spent with that man, that she wished she could erase it all, go back, start over. I listened, but my mind wasn't there anymore. Her words entered the house, but they didn't land in the same place they once would have. The foundation was gone. I watched her plead, and not for a second did I feel like hugging her. I'd already grieved. In the days before, I'd already moved through the anger, the shock, the humiliation. Now it was just about making a decision. When she tried to move closer, I raised my hand. A restrained gesture, and I nodded toward the garage. Corinne hesitated. Then she obeyed. She opened the door, and she saw the boxes, clothes, personal items, documents, everything neatly packed. They were in the trunk of her car, the one she'd left behind days earlier. At the sight of it, she collapsed to her knees, sobbing loudly. She begged for another chance, said she didn't want to lose her home, that I was the only man who truly knew her soul. Her crying grew so intense that she lost her balance and passed out. I rushed over, gently held her head, laid her down on the couch. I fetched water, tried to wake her. A few minutes later, she opened her eyes. Dazed, I didn't say anything. I went back to the porch, opened a beer, and sat there. Just Saturday. When Corinne got up, her face still wet, she walked over to me. She stood there, waiting for me to say something, waiting for a change of heart. I turned my head just enough to see her from the side. "You feeling better?" I asked. Calmly, she nodded. "Your car keys are on the table," I said. "Please leave." Corinne stood there for a few seconds, just hoping I'd change my mind. Then she went inside, grabbed the keys, and walked out the same door she'd used to run away. This time, there was no shouting, no slamming doors, no neighbors watching from the street. I went in and locked the door. The house was quiet now, in a different way. Her absence, once unbearable, now made sense. It was the space I needed for real life to begin again. After the door closed and Corinne left, I didn't let myself fall apart. I was tired of being the one who carried everything. I'd endured the silences, the disguised absences, the empty stares. At the end of the day, now everything was clear, out in the open, and even though it hurt, I knew I'd done what needed to be done. I went back to the living room, picked up the glass she'd left on the table, and washed the lunch dishes. Each plate cleaned felt like confirmation that I'd taken back control. The next day, I picked up the boys from their grandmother's. Rowan got in the car. He stayed quiet for a while before asking if their mom had come back home. I firmly replied that she'd shown up, but she left again soon after. I told them she was okay, and that they could keep seeing her whenever they wanted. Jasper, the younger one, asked if she'd been crying. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and I just nodded. I didn't lie. I didn't try to soften it. The boys deserved the truth, told plainly, without sugarcoating. In the days that followed, the household routine changed. Corinne used to manage everything. Now there were gaps everywhere, but Rowan naturally started helping out. He gathered laundry. He made coffee for himself and his brother. He looked up recipes online to prepare basic meals. It was a silent, protective maturity. Jasper set up an improvised workshop in the backyard, with some old tools that had been stored away for years. He started by fixing his own bike, then the neighbors. And soon, kids from the street were showing up asking for help with brakes, seats, pedals. It was as if he'd found a refuge there, a space that helped him make sense of what he was going through. I noticed, and I decided not to interfere. I watched from a distance and offered support when needed. Occasionally, I'd stop by the hardware store and bring back new parts for my son's workshop. For Rowan, I bought a cookbook. I told him we'd pick one recipe a week to try together. It became a ritual. On Wednesdays, we'd sit at the table with ingredients laid out. We'd experiment, we'd mess up together, and we'd laugh when the sauce turned out too salty or the pasta stayed raw inside. During this time, I received a summons. I had to testify in the legal case involving Sterling and his wife. Corinne's name appeared as the main witness. In court, she confirmed her involvement with Sterling, said she regretted it, explained it had started with lunchtime messages, conversations that seemed harmless at first, but gradually took over. She stated she never imagined it would lead to the destruction of two marriages. Sterling tried to downplay what happened, but his wife's lawyers presented records, photos, and receipts. Corinne left the hearing with her eyes downcast, not greeting anyone. I saw her from afar and simply walked away. Not long after, Corinne lost her job. The news spread quickly among coworkers. The scandal had blown up, and the company chose to cut ties. She moved in with her mother, into a small house on the outskirts of the county. Her mother's health was already failing, requiring constant care. Corinne took over household duties, prepared meals, managed her mother's medications. She tried a few temporary jobs, but nothing permanent stuck. She'd occasionally show up to see the boys, picking them up on Saturdays, returning them Sundays, always looking tired, quiet. She never brought up the past, only asked how school was going, what they were eating, if they were sleeping well. Over time, the boys adjusted to the new routine. I made a point of keeping open communication with both of them. We talked about boundaries, feelings, and what we hoped for in the future. One Sunday, while watching a game on the couch, Rowan turned to me. He said he was proud of me. I just smiled and put my arm around my son's shoulders. That sentence meant more to me than any apology I'd waited to hear during all those years of marriage. Some friends started reaching out again, people who distanced themselves after the whole mess, maybe unsure how to act. They invited me to events, barbecues, dinners. I went, but without rushing back into the social scene. I was more focused on rebuilding what I had at home. Instead of filling the void with distractions, I chose to tend to my inner world, my emotions, my self-worth. I even started running around the neighborhood again, something I'd done back in college. During one of my runs, I ran into an acquaintance who mentioned Sterling was trying to get back with his wife. The attempt had failed. Evelyn had moved to another state with the kids and filed for full custody. Sterling was now being sued for parental alienation and infidelity. Hearing this, I felt no satisfaction. I only felt certain that the choice I'd made was the right one. One afternoon, returning home with Jasper, I found an envelope on the living room floor. Rowan had left it there. It was a note from my ex-wife. She thanked me for letting her keep seeing the boys. Said she felt ashamed, but also grateful I hadn't kept her from being their mother. She wrote that if she could turn back time, she would have protected what we had. Instead of chasing something that only made sense in fantasy, I tucked the note away, without mentioning it to the kids. I knew late remorse couldn't undo anything, but it served as a reminder that in the end, everyone suffers when someone breaks their commitment to their own home. On an ordinary Saturday, Corinne showed up at the door to take the kids for lunch. It was part of the new routine. Now she'd stop by, chat briefly with me. The boys would leave, and they'd be back by evening. No arguments, No tension, but no intimacy either. Just the essentials. This time, I immediately noticed something different about her. Her posture, her gaze, the way she held her bag. She was thinner, with deeper lines on her face. Her hair, once always neat, was now tied back carelessly. Rowan and Jasper noticed too, but said nothing. They just got in the car, exchanged a few words, and drove off. Before leaving, Corinne turned for a moment and explained that the car belonged to a neighbor. She'd sold hers to pay for her mother's more expensive treatment, as her condition had worsened over recent weeks. She also mentioned she was working shifts at a local grocery store and taking care of the house all day. I listened, nodded in response, and stood there watching the three of them drive away. I felt no anger, no pity, just that cold realization that none of this had to happen. That night, when the boys came back, Rowan mentioned their mom had cried in the car, but tried to hide it. He said she was exhausted, but still believed things would work out someday. Jasper stayed quiet the whole time. He just went upstairs and listened to music. I avoided asking questions. I simply called them for dinner and let time sort out whatever each of them was feeling. The following week, while folding the kids' laundry, I found a note in the pocket of a pair of pants. It was from Corinne. She wrote that she knew how much she'd hurt everyone, but that she still loved me, that she dreamed, even silently, of a chance to start over, that she understood if I'd already moved on, but needed to say this at least once, even if it was too late. I read it carefully. I folded the paper and tucked it into a drawer among other old papers. I felt no anger, no hope. I realized that after everything, forgiving her was necessary. But for myself, to live in peace, to move forward without carrying invisible chain, I no longer needed explanations or promises. Life had already given me the answers. Today, each of us walks our own path. Corinne lives with her mother, splitting her time between hospital visits and shifts at the store. I rebuilt my routine with the boys, found stability at home, learned to appreciate the silence after the storm. When we meet to exchange the boys, there's respect, sometimes even a brief smile. But what once existed has faded with time and mistakes. The love she claims to still feel now faces a different man, more whole, less available. And if there's any lesson in all this, it's that broken trust isn't repaired with words, but with choices, and that forgiveness, no matter how necessary, doesn't require anyone to return to a place where they've already suffered too much. I finally feel 40 and free.